Representative Newberry.
This is my last amendment. No, in all seriousness, though, you know, my biggest issue with this legislation, and it goes back to whether it conforms to Roe v. Wade, is the issue of what does it mean, exceptions for the health of the mother, particularly in the third trimester. Watching the Judiciary Committee hearing on TV the other day during the vote, the question was put to committee counsel, and I believe he said that it also includes, under some precedents, mental health. And I don't know how you define mental health in a statute like this. I really don't. But I have concerns that that is the proverbial truck, or whatever cliche you can think of. That's the exception that might swallow the rule when it comes to third trimester abortions. I think there's very few people that would argue if there was a physical threat to the mother's safety, a third trimester abortion should not be allowed. But if a doctor and the patient can choose under some kind of loose mental health standard, what does that mean? I can't define it, but I think we should define some things that it does not include. We can do that. You know, we legislate a lot of things as a society for different reasons. Some of it's mundane. We legislate traffic laws so people they know which way to go on the roads. We discuss them, but they're not controversial. You don't go to the heart of things. But sometimes we pass legislation to tell people who we are and who we are not. And so, Mr. Speaker, I have one final amendment. I'd like to move LC 000-518/16.
Representative Newberry moves Amendment LC 000-518/16. That is seconded by Representative Roberts, Representative Nadone, Whip Chippendale, Representative Price, Representative Quattrochi, Representative Place, Lita Filippi, Representative McLaughlin, Chairman Corvasi. I think I got you, Representative Nadone. No other seconds. Proceed, Representative.
My concern is this. Do I think that 99.99% of women who are going to go get a third trimester abortion and who are doing it for mental health reasons are going to somehow abuse this or do something horrible? No, I do not. So I'm sure the argument's going to be made, well, you have to trust women. I do. But there are certain things that we as a society should say are not allowed. And I enumerate for them. I do not want anyone to have a third trimester abortion because they claim that they have mental anguish because the baby they're carrying inside them is of the wrong sex, the wrong race, is suffering from Down syndrome, or last but not least, there's not yet that I know of a test for this, but every person I know, including my son who is gay, has never told me it's a choice. And I think genetic science may someday get there. I don't want someone to say that the mental anguish of having a child who is not straight will cause them to get a third trimester abortion. I think we as a society owe that. I think it's a statement of decency to pass this. It's not going to affect people who truly need abortions in the third trimester if this law passes. But it tells the public that we're not monsters, that we don't discriminate. We should pass this amendment.
Representative McEntee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is probably the most insulting of them all. To suggest that a woman would decide to select the sex of her fetus and the mental health, whether it be mental or physical disabilities and Down syndrome of the fetus, or the sexual preference of the fetus. I've never even heard of a test that would show that. And the race of a fetus in the third trimester is ridiculous. We have prenatal testing that can determine, other than the sexual preference that I'm aware of, in early gestation. They have amniocentesis and several other things that will tell any prospective mother if she's concerned about these issues. I mean, there's many women that are concerned about disabilities or the health of the child that would go out and seek these tests, and others say, I don't care if it's male, female, if it has a disability, I'll have the baby anyway. But, you know, women know what they can live with. Women know what they need to know to prepare for birth, and to suggest that they would have these tests and not know anything, but in the third trimester say, I don't want to do this anymore, it is just it shows total disrespect for women, total disrespect for the intelligence of women, and how seriously we hold being mothers. I've been a mother 4 times. I know many of you in here have been mothers. I mean, to suggest that I would terminate in late pregnancy without knowing, without having determined one way or the other these 4 aspects, and saying that it meant a lot to me, but I decided not to have the test, but for some reason now I know, and that's the end of it. I mean, I don't even know where you come up with sexual preference. I'm still baffled by that one. And I mean, I have my sister, Chairwoman Williams, I know, is going to speak to this quite fluently about the race of the fetus. We certainly should know that prior to birth as well. I mean, this is just, and none of it points to the real language in the bill, which is on page 2, lines 24 through 26, Section D. The termination of an individual pregnancy after fetal viability is expressly prohibited, except when necessary, in the medical judgment of the physician to preserve the life or health of that individual, that mother. None of these 4 pieces of information would in any way affect the health or life of the mother. So I rise in total opposition to this, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, why you would put a thing like this in. But thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Almeida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. Representative McEntee took the wind out of my sail. Thank you, my sister. I appreciate that. Race. What? Y'all know how I feel about that, and I'm not one for lacking for words, but this one really got me. What a shopping cart. What a shopping cart of all of these. How did race get involved in all of this all of a sudden? Whose decision was that to make to add this in here? I'm gonna let it go. Because I'm sure that everybody in here can feel and hear my anger. I can't even fully respond to this. Not only should this be go away, but just the thought of introducing this under race. Race. After what we just talked about last month. Chavez said maybe nobody heard me. Thank you, Representative McEntee. Normally I'm not one for running out of words, but you took them all, my sister. But vote against this, leave the race card out, and if anybody's got a question on race, why don't you come talk to me? I'm sure, damn sure, I'm a good expert on that. Kill this bill. Thank you.
Deputy Speaker Lima.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, may I please, I made a mistake on the last amendment. I wanted to vote yes instead of no. It wouldn't change the outcome.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Chairwoman Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of this chamber, I rise in total, completely, absolute opposition against this amendment. Once again, an insult to a woman. This is so insensitive to say that we would choose to have an abortion. Lordy, 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 honey. it's also an insult to the LGBTQ community, not only the community of color, to have included, to even have put this amendment in. But what I'm getting out of this is educating me of the type of thoughts that the individual had when putting this together. Imagine how insensitive to say that I'm going to utilize abortion as a means of birth control because I don't want my child to be gay. I don't want anybody to know that I've been sneaking around with a white man and my baby might come out white. Hello. Really? Really? That wouldn't happen because it would be a beautiful chocolate baby. But nevertheless, this is an insult. This is a blatant insult to every and any woman. To say that we would utilize an abortion to prevent, to avoid, to change what may be possible. What, really? Come on, please. I ask every one of you to vote against this. If you have voted for any one amendment in here tonight, this is one that everybody should vote against. If it's the only one, this is one. And let me hope not that there aren't any other ones coming up with similar language up in here, because it's going to tell us exactly what these individuals think about the women. Not just the ones that are here, but all the women in the state of Rhode Island. Because we don't know, not one of us know, what situation we may find ourselves in, Catholic or not. I'm a believer. But at the end of the day, if we're going to be dealing with stuff like this, I'm letting you know that you're clearly sending the message to everybody in the state of Rhode Island that women ain't got it going on. That they're not deserving of respect. They cannot think for themselves. They cannot do the right thing. And they're less than. So you all have to come up with foolishness because you think that we cannot think for ourselves. Really? Honey, we may have come from your rib, but we have carried you all. How do you like that one? Don't play us. Respect us. Know that we are somebody. Don't think that there are all bad women. We all have our bad days and we fall short. We're not perfect.
15 seconds.
But to say that these are reasons, oh, come on, vote no. And I hope there's no more coming on because Shanae is present now.
Whip Chippendale.
Certainly standing at the edge of an abyss right now. I don't view this at all in the way it was represented. I'll tell you how I view it. Because I recall, I did serve a couple of years on judiciary, and I was just diligently searching for the bill, and I was unsuccessful in finding it. But gender selection was an issue that the Judiciary Committee did entertain relative to abortions. And some of the testimony was based on practices of other cultures or nations that folks were concerned may or may not become possible here in the U.S. At a certain point in a pregnancy, and I remember this very well because it really had an impression on me. The mom and the dad, the husband, the mom and the dad will have an opportunity to have an amniocentesis performed. And the only reason an amniocentesis is performed is to determine if the baby has Down syndrome. And me being stupid and naive and innocent, I asked the doctor, because he told me how dangerous the procedure was, and he told Sherry how dangerous this procedure was. I said, well, doctor, why would we undergo a dangerous procedure? And he said, well, you may want to terminate the baby if it has Down syndrome. So let's not pretend that these choices aren't made every day. The world is full, and this is where the FCC can get me in trouble, so I got to be very measured. The world is filled with dirtbags. Some are men, some are women. They're all people. People make some really messed up choices. People decide to hate a person because they're gay. People decide to hate a person because of where they come from. People decide to hate a person because they're crippled. Bigotry does exist. I see this amendment as an attempt to say at no time shall a person use their bigotry against that particular quality in their baby to end its termination. What could compel someone to do that? And this is not a statement to the women who have very articulately made their point. But all women and all men is an absolute, and I spoke of that earlier. We can't speak in absolutes. Yes, under pressure from a bigoted dude, a woman could make a really bad choice. I'm stunned at the gasps. We have heard in various testimony on various bills over the years how, unfortunately, women are victimized by bad dudes. We hear it all the time. We pass legislation to help women get out of those situations. Let's not deny that we do that. So we acknowledge that these things take place. That acknowledgement is visible in our body of work, in our statutes that are used every day. This is an attempt to prevent bigotry against a preborn baby because he may be undesirable to someone for some messed up reason in their own crazy world. They can rationalize it. Because guess what? The world's filled with crazy people who are bigoted. We can't deny these basic truths. To do that is to rebuke all the work we've done over the years. Our body of work supports that this is an issue.
15 seconds.
Thank you, Speaker. So I'm a little disheartened that the sponsor is being attacked on these issues because we as a body have validated this very amendment based on the issues we've taken over the years and the actions we've taken over the years. Thank you, Speaker.
Representative Kazar.
All right, thank you. I am deeply grateful for the patience of the people in this room who continue to be underestimated in the testimony that we're hearing. But more importantly, I'm deeply grateful to our medical professionals and the people who, if any of us in this room have a medical emergency or a medical problem, will be there for us, even though this body continues to insult the medical profession. With this particular amendment, I see that someone is doing a thought experiment in which they take the idea, some small idea, and take it out of the context that abortion and all obstetric services are conducted in licensed professional medical facilities. Women do not make decisions about their terminations and act on them without the help of a medical professional. The time that they did that was before Roe v. Wade, and we are working very hard to make sure that we don't return to that. Many of us have family members who were alive during that time, who had to deal with unplanned abortions. Many people who have come to this building year after year to testify dealt with that. But the fact is, we made things better, and we let our medical professionals not just deal with the aftermath of unsafe and botched abortions, but we let our medical professionals have the ability and the tools and the skills to perform safe legal procedures when medically necessary, to working with women. Earlier, I mentioned this fact that I think we want to go back to. I want us never to forget that right now, 75% of the women who access abortion services are poor or low income, and 60% already have children. These are not people who are taking any decision lightly, although it's insulting to say to any woman that maybe she's taking this decision lightly. But the fact is that she is making these decisions and acting on them with some of the most amazing, caring, generally underpaid professionals in our communities, and we depend on them every day. I wish we could have a shout out for the obstetricians whose lives are a little more difficult because we're continuing to fight to legislate what they can and can't do to help their patients. I oppose this amendment deeply, and I hope you do too.
Chairman Covesi.
Representative Chippendale talked about being at the abyss. I'm going to try to walk very gingerly through this minefield. I would hope that my comments will not be taken out of context. So let's keep it within the context of the bill, the amendment before us. The one thing that troubles me down the road and presently is the sex of the fetus for purposes of sex selection. In 1933, no one would have thought that 40 years later there would be a Roe versus Wade. And in 1933, no one could have anticipated, for the most part, the technology that was present in 1973. Now here we are in 2019, and we have no idea 40 years from now what's going to be around technologically in 2059. We know that there has been much discussion over the years with regard to designer genetics. But even if you don't go so far as discussing the potential for designer genetics and its potential implications in society, which would justify lines 11, 12, and 13, with all due respect to Representative Williams, who I care for deeply, and my dear friend Representative Almeida, and Representative McEntee, who brought some very good points up. We don't know 40 years from now, 30 years from now, and quite frankly, even shorter than that, because it seems that technology grows by leaps and bounds exponentially as opposed to linearly. So I know that, with all due respect, 11, 12, and 13 were considered some type of latent bias or bigotry. I don't believe that. I want everyone to know when I'm when I'm quoted on all the blogs by all the left, understand that I'm looking at this not from a bigot's point of view, but from a geneticist, not that I'm a geneticist, from an individual who has some semblance of genetics and who understands that technology advances very quickly. So Representative Newberry is not being a bigot. Okay, I think he's bringing up a very legitimate point for the future of what could happen technologically with regard to 11, 12, and 13. What bothers me, why I'm going to vote for this is line 10. Because in certain totalitarian regimes, that is forced upon women. I find that abhorrent. So let's keep the discussion civil and reasonable. With all due respect, and my friend Representative Almeida just came into the room, I respect Representative Williams, Representative Almeida. Please? Oh, I didn't see you. See, I didn't see you. I respect Representative Williams, Representative Almeida, Representative McEntee's opinions on this, but I really don't believe that the heart and soul of this matter is a question of bigotry. I really do consider this something that, and if you read anything about designer genetics, you can see where the potentiality exists for the future for 11, 12, and 13, and for me, the present is sex of the fetus. So regardless of how you feel about this, take this within the context it has been offered. It has not been offered from a bigotry point of view, but more from a technological point of view, and not realizing what can happen in 30 years, 20 years, or even 10 years. So I ask you to seriously consider this bill. Thank you.
Representative McLaughlin.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, members of the House, in reference to Rep. Newberry's amendment, I don't think he meant any harm, okay? He's no bigot, just like any of you are no bigots. I'll tell you what, the only bigotry presented... Hey, can I speak?
Representative
Can I speak?
All right. Wait, hold on. Representative McLaughlin, take a deep breath. Representative Almeida, thank you. Next time, just ask for a point of order, and let's do it in a proper protocol. Try to refrain from using the word bigot and proceed. Thank you, Representative McLaughlin, although I find you did nothing wrong. Proceed.
Presented here today was, okay, in 1938, a monster came in this world. Adolf Hitler. He defined what children were going to look like in Germany. He defined if they were blue-eyed, blonde hair, okay, they might live. If they had mental conditions, you know, they were to be eliminated in the camps. Anybody ever been to Dachau? I have. So when I hear about these, this rep meant no harm. Okay, he was trying to defend the unborn. Okay, do you know what? 1/2 of all abortions that are performed in the United States are of the female gender. Okay, do you know that? Do you know that that baby in the womb is a baby? It's not a procedure. It gets torn apart. All right, or maybe injected, whatever you prefer. All right, so you know, to basically jump on this man's case, I don't want to hear it. It's sickening. Thank you.
Representative Almeida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Newberry is a good man. I have no problem, Representative Newberry. I have a problem with the language in this. I have a problem with the word bigot. I have a problem with the word race. I have a problem that when we talked all last month, that I know things are going to change in 40 years, 30 years. I understand that, Representative Corvese. But I also know that there will be more black people, more Latinos, more people of color. There will be more women of color that will be involved in the medical profession. That is what I was trying to get to, Mr. Speaker. I may disagree with you, Mr. Speaker, in regarding the definition or the speaking of that nasty-ass word, let it go. But right about now, I'm not feeling this. We're supposed to be talking about this amendment. This is not a reflection of Representative Newberry. I wish I had got to you earlier, but it's here now. What the hell am I gonna do? We have a lot of professional people in the black community that are doctors that are being represented. And what you gonna do when you have a child of 2-3 different colored races running through his or her blood? Mr. Speaker, I'm concerned, ladies and gentlemen, that this conversation's going away to a degree that it don't need to go. Kill this amendment. Thank you.
Leader Filippi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let's just be clear what this amendment does. It's aimed at the potential for eugenics in the future. Right now, there's approximately 117 missing females on Earth who have been aborted, 60 million in China, which are sex-selective abortions. In India, there's an enormous number too. I think what Representative Newberry did, he looked at the protected classes under federal law and said that we will use that as a basis to prevent third trimester abortions in the future based on that protected class. There's no ill will. I feel that this actually prevents people from making a decision to abort based on the race of a baby. I don't see this as racist. I see this as protecting race. Thank you.
Representative Ruggiero.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, good evening. We are approaching 3 hours, and I am in awe of the patience that I've heard, seen from all of you. This is such a deeply personal issue for all of us. I stand in opposition to this amendment. We are not writing legislation for China or against Hitler. We are talking about the state of Rhode Island. And I want to just comment about our medical community here because, yes, there are many medical advances. And what's available today was not even around 4 years ago. And as I look at this room, I don't see one medical doctor because we are a citizen legislature. I see teachers. I see lawyers, some good, some not so good. I see retirees. I see business people like myself. I am not a neonatal doctor, and neither is anyone else. So we cannot be so prescriptive with the medical community. We have to remember the most important thing, women have a constitutional right to their reproductive health. And ignoring that and ignoring the medical community, I am just finding stunning. Never mind the language about the sex, the sexual preference, I find that very offensive. I mean, this is just beyond the pale. That's a law term, just saying. I would hope you would strike down this amendment as human beings, as people who believe in diversity, that we bring our differences and we celebrate that. We don't legislate this kind of thing. And I just want to say, please defeat it. Thank you for listening, and thank you for the floor, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ucci.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As one of the lawyers in the room, I would also like to point out that we also have communication professionals here, some good, some not so good. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Vella Wilkinson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand in support of this amendment specifically because of the protections that it offers to the fetuses that may be born with Down syndrome. The population of Down syndrome children is down 30%. And while I would like to think it was because of the advances in science, unfortunately, statistics prove that between 67 and 85% of preborns that are found to have Down syndrome are aborted. And according to a published study in the American Journal of Medical Genetics, 28% of the women regretted their decision to abort their baby with Down syndrome even 2 years after the abortion had taken place. 2 years later, they were still feeling that regret. Now, I've had the opportunity to work with population that has Down syndromes. I'm a member of the St. Benedict's Church, and we have the largest population of Down syndrome residents that come for religious instruction in the SPREAD program. And we're talking about individuals that are sheer joyful. And I don't know many people that I see day to day in my life that take joy in even the simplest things of life. Personally, I'd like to surround myself with people that are joyful as opposed to people that are constantly shaking their fist and saying that the sky is falling. Again, I understand that my colleague had said that she doesn't believe that a mother would purposely abort a child with Down syndrome, but statistics would prove you wrong. So thank you. For that reason and that reason alone, I will be supporting this amendment.
Chairwoman Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wasn't going to get back up, but my sister just said that people do abort because knowing or finding out that their child may be born with Down syndrome. But the fact still remains that, you know, there's definitely a need for sensitivity training when things are being drafted. One size does not fit all. And while you're looking up laws, we need to also be sensitive enough to know that we need to also look up the meaning that's being translated to different cultures that it would and may affect. This bill, in as much as Doc, Representative Corvese, Filippi, Representative Chippendale, and others may have stood up to defend this amendment because they believe that it did not, its intention was not, they didn't view the amendment the way that myself and my colleague, Representative Almeida, took it. Trust me, many other people of color took it exactly how we presented it. Exactly how I described it on this floor. So I am saying that when you talk about protective class, people of color are, LGBTQ community are, so need to be a little bit more sensitive in how you draft things, and don't think that it's all about you always. It's all about all of us, all the time. Thank you. Vote it down.
There are no other lights. Clerk, unlock the machine. All in favor of the amendment, please vote green. Those opposed, red. Clerk, lock the machine. 13 in favor, 57 opposed. The amendment fails.